So now we'll go ahead and transition. So our next speaker is Dr. Brian Jenks, who's a research extension weed scientist at the Minot, the North Central Research Extension Center out in Minot, North Dakota. And so Dr. Jenks is also zooming in remotely. So Brian, I'll just go ahead and turn it over to you if you're ready.
Okay, can you hear me and see my slides?
Yes.
All right, thank you. I'm going to jump right into this with a weed control update. I'm going to talk very briefly about a herbicide that's new that you may hear of. We have not, or I personally have not worked with this product yet. I don't think we have that much experience with it, but based on the label and a conversation with a company rep, this is what I know about the product. So can you see my Reviton slide?
Yes, we are.
Okay. All right. Okay. So this is a product from Helm. It's a group 14. It's the common name is tiafenacil. So it's kind of similar to the sharpened name of saflufenacil. We know that it has less residual than sharpen. Reviton, the label says no, it has no pre-emergence activity. So my best guess is this is somewhere between a sharpen and aim. Currently, it has a 14-day planting interval to soybean, but that is going to be changed to a 0-day in the future. They have more data to support that. 0-day planting interval for corn and wheat, and 30 to 60 days for sugar beet. 4 to 6 months for other crops, and it'll probably be 20 to 24 before it's labeled for other crops. It is a 2.83 pound per gallon applied at 1 to 3 ounces. The label does not list specific weeds yet. It just says used to control or suppress a broad spectrum of emerged broadleaf and grass weeds. It has the difference. One of the main differences here is that this product has grass activity, very good on wild oat, I'm told, whereas obviously Sharpen and AIM do not have grass activity. I've also been told this product is not as good on horseweed compared to Sharpen, but close. The label says to always use MSO and COC or NIS, and that AMS and or UN is allowed. Now, in our experience, any of these group 14s, they're always more effective when you use AMS and MSO together with the product. Okay, I'm going to shift gears to kochia. Now, kochia, obviously, we've got some issues because kochia is difficult to control in the spring because of multiple reasons. Glyphosate resistance, high densities of kochia mats. The leaves are hairy, hard to get that herbicide into the plant. And then spraying a spring burn down, we're sometimes dealing with cold temperatures. Also, our post-emergence kochia control isn't as good as it used to be, especially since we're starting to deal with resistance to starane. So this is the next few slides. I'm going to talk about how some studies we've conducted to look at kochia control with different products, Valor, Spartan, and others, to try and help us spray herbicides in the fall to try and reduce the number of kochia that are emerging early in the spring. Now, we know kochia is emerging primarily in the spring, but can we get a herbicide on in the fall that will help reduce that density in the spring? Now, in previous studies, we have seen that fall applied Valor has been quite effective in reducing that kochia density early in the spring. I personally have conducted at least 3 studies where we have seen this, and it's been anywhere from fair to excellent control of kochia from a fall Valor. So we did another study last fall, or the previous year, and where we were looking primarily at Valor and Spartan. And this fall application was applied October 8. So we had Valor applied at 3 ounces in the fall. Here is Valor and Spartan together. This is a split application, Spartan in the fall, and then 2.5 ounces, 2.5 ounces pre-emergence. This pre-emergence application was applied May 6th, or the spring application. Here is Spartan applied 5 ounces in the fall versus 4 ounces in the spring. Valor in the fall, followed by Authority MTZ in the spring, or Authority MTZ in the spring only. Valor alone in the fall, followed by Spartan plus Sharpen in the spring. Spartan plus Sharpen together in the spring. And Valor plus Metribuzin plus 2,4-D. This is 3 ounces plus 1/3 pound product in the fall. And then just a straight glyphosate in the spring. So the fall application was October 8th. The spring application was May 6th. So on May 6th, I went out the same day we put out the spring application, and I did an evaluation of kochia control. How well did those fall applications work? Well, here are the numbers. And this was very disappointing. This was Valor in the fall, only 52%. Valor Spartan together, 61. Fall 2.5 of Spartan, 27. 48 for Spartan in the fall, 61 for Valor. Of course, this is a 0 because it was just applied on this day on May 6th. And then Valor here again. And the one that worked a little bit better was Valor Metribuzin 2,4-D. Okay, so this was the first evaluation in the spring. Now let's jump to May 22nd, where this would be 16 days after the pre. So 16 days after the pre, our fall applications still don't look very good, or look even worse. Then for some reason, our Spartan spring by itself didn't work very good. And normally Spartan is very good on kochia. Now, I need to remind you, we did not put any Roundup on these other treatments. Yes, we put Roundup by itself down here, only 56% control 16 days after application. But none of these other treatments had a Roundup, because we're just trying to see what these products will do on their own. So none of these treatments worked until we get right here. Authority MTZ, 99% control. This was this was Valor. So Valor alone didn't provide much, or didn't provide great control, but having the Authority MTZ applied in the spring, 99% control. Authority MTZ by itself, spring, 97. Here's Spartan Sharpen, Spartan plus Sharpen pre, and then the Valor plus Metribuzin, which was applied in the fall, doesn't look as good. Now 65, and then glyphosate 56. So right here, this is what I wanted to focus on, is this effect of the Metribuzin tank mixed with the Spartan. Obviously, Authority MTZ is Spartan plus Metribuzin, and we have known of this effect before on other weeds, that the Metribuzin sometimes can enhance control of certain weeds, even post-emergence. So if we jump out to May 29, everything is faltering except our Authority MTZ treatments still here above 90%. None of the other numbers all the other numbers are below 63. Now, I should mention, we did have on May 6, or excuse me, on May 9, we had 40 hundredths of rain. So 3 days after the pre went on, we had 40 hundredths. Then May 24th, we had about a half inch. And then June 6, 0.61 inches. If we jump out to June 11, you can see all the fall treatments now all these treatments really did nothing. We we actually, you know, despite these rains, we were very dry through the year, but this Authority MTZ still worked very well. So this is one study. Then in a separate study, fall versus spring, in this study, I wanted to look at Reglone. Actually, I had intended to look at Paraquat, but for various reasons, I switched to Reglone rather than Paraquat. So in this one, we had a Valor in the fall, followed by Spartan Pre, again, October 8 and May 6. Here we had Reglone plus NIS, Reglone plus Spartan Charge, Reglone plus Metribuzin, Reglone AIM, Reglone Sharpen. So basically, we're looking at Reglone followed by various group 14s and then Metribuzin here. So again, here's our rainfall totals. These pre's went on May 6th. I did my first evaluation on May 6th. And in this evaluation, the Valor here did not work at all. Okay, so why did the Valor not work in this study or the first study that I showed you? My best explanation is that when we made the applications in the fall, we had some old kochia residue plant residue on the soil surface that was covering about 60% of the soil surface. My best guess is that the herbicide application from the fall applications were the herbicide spray was tied up in that old plant residue. I don't have any other explanation as to why it absolutely did not work when in previous years we've seen Valor work quite well as a fall application and reducing spring kochia densities. So let's jump out to May 22nd here. 62. This is the Valor Spartan, 80 with Reglone by itself. So we're getting some burn down from the Reglone. Reglone plus Spartan Charge, 74. And here's our Metribuzin again. Reglone Metribuzin, 97. AIM and Sharpen, not so great. But again, the Metribuzin stood out. So if we jump out here to May 29, once again, the one that's holding on here is Metribuzin, while the others are dropping down to 60 or less. And then June 11, we still have 89% control with that Reglone Metribuzin. So it appears from these two studies that we were getting some foliar control from the Metribuzin when tank mixed with Reglone or tank mixed with in the Authority MTZ formulation. So this got me thinking, okay, well, maybe we can use this Metribuzin in front of some crops to help enhance burn down control of kochia. Now, I need to mention, if I didn't already, that the kochia in these two studies, the kochia was less than 1 inch tall at application on May 6th, less than 1 inch tall. So I wanted to see if this was a fluke or if there's something really to this. So I did another study where we looked at the effect of Metribuzin on emerged kochia. And what we did was we went out on May 29 and we sprayed 3-inch kochia, 63 degrees, and we sprayed Spartan glyphosate, Metribuzin, Spartan Metribuzin, Sharpen glyphosate, Metribuzin. So all kinds of combinations here with Spartan, glyphosate, Metribuzin, Sharpen, Reglone, Metribuzin, and then Roundup by itself. And then I wanted to see, well, what does Metribuzin do by itself Well, so this, again, this is applied May 29, came back on June 8, and none of the treatments actually worked as well, especially the metribuzin treatment. So this glyphosate metribuzin right here, that's essentially equivalent to that Authority MTZ, was only 84%. Sharpened glyphosate metribuzin, 87. Regular metribuzin, which was 90 plus, that was only 77. So I think what this is telling me is that these treatments, especially including the metribuzin, were much more effective on 1-inch kochia than 3-inch kochia. Once that kochia is getting a little bit taller, this metribuzin was not as effective. And then the residual control was not quite as good either. So this is something I want to continue looking at in the future. One other kochia study, kochia control with Roundup, Liberty, and Enlist. I'm going to go through this fairly quickly. This was a treatment study where we had Liberty 32 ounces versus Roundup 28, and then different combinations of Roundup and Liberty at a few different rates. Then Roundup and Enlist, Duo and Enlist 1, Enlist Duo, Enlist 1, Liberty by itself, and Roundup by itself. Again, this was sprayed on May 29, 65 degrees, 30% relative humidity, and on what I would consider small kochia, 1/4 inch to 2 inches. Wherever we had the Liberty, all the Liberty treatments, we basically smoked the kochia. Now, I'll be honest, I was surprised because I didn't think that Liberty would perform this well, 65 degrees in the month of May. Usually we think of Liberty as, Liberty needs heat and sun. I thought it might perform well, but it did very well. Roundup by itself, only 81. Enlist Duo, 93. Enlist 1, only 61. And Roundup by itself, 73. So now the Liberty label the new Liberty label does now allow a spring burn down in front of certain crops. Corn, soybean, and canola, I believe, are the only ones. Okay, jumping to narrowleaf hawksbeard. Narrowleaf hawksbeard is a winter annual, and we have told you previously that we focus on fall applications to control this winter annual weed that emerges in the fall. We've had success with combinations of glyphosate, Valor Express, and 2,4-D. This was a study conducted by Ed Davis in Bozeman. This was applied October 28 of 2019. This is on a sandy loam soil, pH 5.5, organic matter 2.1. This was Metricor, which is metribuzin, applied at 3 different rates here by itself, and then at 0.75 pints. This is equivalent to 1/3 of a pound product of the 75 DF, 1/3, half, and 2/3 pound product. So these are quite hefty rates here. But this is 1/3 of a pound. And this is dry pea injury, lentil injury, and then control of lamb's quarter, Russian thistle, buckwheat, foxtail. And then this is percent control. With the narrowleaf hawksbeard here, he counted the number of plants per plot. I also want to mention down here, if you see, Roundup was applied to all plots, both fall and spring, including the untreated. So in a nutshell, if you look here at the untreated, there were 13.5 plants in July, 13.5 plants per plot. Where we applied the Metricor at these different rates, there was less than or 1.5 or less. And with all the other treatments with Valor, Panaflex, Sonalan, Prowl H2O, very low numbers here. So obviously the Metricore is providing control of this winter annual weed. So again, this was applied October 24th, so in the fall. So fall applied metribuzin provided good control of narrowleaf hawksbeard. However, the fall applied metribuzin and Valor did not provide season-long control of the spring emerging weeds. And here's a picture. This is actually the first time he had conducted this study. Here is the glyphosate alone. Here is metribuzin plus glyphosate here in the center, and then Clarity plus glyphosate. And you can see from in the center, the metribuzin is actually doing quite well. So this is something we want, we're going to look into more, using metribuzin in the fall to help control winter annuals. Okay, a few other things. I've only got a few minutes left here, but just a note on Tough. Tough will be available this year. The label, the product has been registered. Tough is very good on kochia and some other broadleaf weeds. Tough will be labeled in chickpea. Just a couple of things I want to mention. The price you're going to see in the weed guide, I have been told, is higher than what they're actually going to sell it at. I expect it to be expensive, but I don't know what the price is going to be for sure. If you do use Tough, make sure you apply it with oil. Make sure you apply it at 1.5 pints. The label will say if you apply it at less than 1.5 pints, you will get less weed control, and we have seen that. Another herbicide that we're working on in IR4 is called Storm. Storm is a combination of IR4, of Ultra Blazer and Basagran. Again, this is an IR4 study. And what we have seen is that applying Storm in dry pea, if we apply it with COC, we have more injury than with NIS and as well with no adjuvant. So weed control is better with COC, but you also get a little bit of crop injury, a little more crop injury with COC. That's something that's coming for peas down the road. Question has been asked about PPO overload. If we apply, because we've been pushing Valor in the fall, again for no-till, not for conventional till. We've been pushing Valor in the fall to help control winter annuals and to help reduce that spring kochia density. But what it's been asked, if we apply Valor in the fall and then Spartan in the spring, are we going to have a PPO overload? So we conducted a study where we applied Valor followed by Spartan, Valor followed by Spartan plus Sharpen to get 2 PPOs in there, or actually 3, and then also a Valor plus Spartan plus metribuzin. And we did this in dry pea and sunflower. And in this study, we saw no injury. And so I at this point do not see any evidence of PPO overload injury to dry pea and sunflower. A similar study where we were looking at dry pea tolerance to group 14 herbicide tank mixes. At one point, BASF had a label restriction where you couldn't apply Sharpen in combination with another group 14 like Spartan. And so we conducted some studies to see if there would be too much injury from tank mixing Sharpen with Spartan or with AIM, or like a Spartan Charge. And we did not see evidence of excessive injury or even that much difference when you apply Sharpen with Spartan on dry pea injury. In fact, the injury, in my view, is more related to the soil characteristics than tank mixing group 14 combinations. Ultimately, if it's been safe, if the soil has been safe for Spartan, it's probably been safe for the tank mixes. So right now, you can apply Sharpen with 1 ounce in dry pea or 1 to 2 ounces in chickpeas as a tank mix or sequential applications with and this is for dry pea and chickpea. So applying Sharpen as a tank mix with Spartan or a sequential. Now with soybean, this is a minimum soybean planting intervals. They still require with 1 ounce 14-day pre-plant interval. Just a quick note, even though we were really dry this spring, I just wanted to point out, show you a picture of, even though, okay, so we know we're dry in the spring many times, and we say, well, gee, I'm not going to bother putting out that soil applied herbicide, and because it's not going to do any good. However, sometimes we can see, even in dry conditions, that pre is doing more good than we think it is. So here we have an untreated. Here's Balance plus atrazine. You can see this is loaded with foxtail. And we've heard some people say, well, foxtail isn't competitive. In the western part of the state, it is. Maybe in the eastern part of the state, it's not as competitive. But in the western part of the state, foxtail is definitely competitive. So here's Balance plus atrazine. Here's Balance plus atrazine plus harness. And you can just look at the crop difference and see the effect, the benefit of the pre-emergence herbicide, even under dry conditions. Okay, real quick, we've been evaluating wild oat and green foxtail samples from across the state for resistance. And in 2019, we had 57 wild oat samples, 8 green foxtail samples, and you can see the percent of resistance that we had. 35% of Puma, 35% of these 57 populations were resistant to Puma, 17 to axial, 43 to 52 were resistant to our group 2s, 44 to Raptor, 41 Assure 2, 3% Select. For our green foxtail samples, we started to see a little bit more group 2 resistance with green foxtail. And, but in this sample, no resistance yet to Select. However, I will tell you, we are starting to see in some newer samples, some resistance to Select with green foxtail. And then just a summary of our 2016 to 2019 totals. This is the 153 wild oat samples we've tested, 93 green foxtail samples we've tested. And you can see about 3/4 of them have been resistant to Puma. This is wild oat, Puma, Everest, Gold Sky, Varro. A little less with Axial. That's why I say we can still use Axial quite a bit, even if we have other group 1 resistance. 53% to Raptor, 75 Assure 2, 6% to Select. 90 of the 93 green foxtail samples, we obviously have a lot of group 1 resistance, 11 to 17% of group 2s, 41% Assure 2. None have been resistant to Raptor, 1 resistant to Select, and none resistant to Roundup. Okay, I am out of time, and